So, GRIDD Retroenhanced is a game that's out on Steam right now. It exists, incredible. And it's sort of like a shmup similar to Star Fox, but it has like really cool visuals, like these 80s cyberspace stuff. And it has a really banging soundtrack as well. And it's really arcade style, as in like, okay, you're just trying to get through a gauntlet of obstacles, trying to survive as long as possible, and trying to get as many points as possible, or as high of a high score as possible. It has two modes right now: the arcade mode, where you just beat the game, which is probably going to take you many attempts because it's actually fairly difficult. And then you have the endless mode that gets unlocked after that, where you can just see how long you can survive against ever-increasing difficulty that I'm playing right now. So what I have to say about the game is that it's a very intense game. Like, as you can see, also the camera, it's very close to your guy, and the your HUD is actually like floating around in front of your side where you're usually looking at, which is good in my opinion. I like it when the HUD is actually where I look, not where I don't look. And together with all the effects that are going on, with the all the visuals, the soundtrack, the sound effects as well, the camera, how the camera moves, how you move, everything. Everything is oriented on being very intense and hype and action filled and getting your blood pumping. And I actually really like that. Something I have to say though is, since I said I was gonna be honest about this, is that because everything is so built on being very intense and hype, in some places it feels like, because of the camera and because of the movement and everything, because of the it being 3D and how you move around, there are some places where it's not quite that obvious where your ship is in relation to everything else, and it's not quite that obvious how you have to move through specific obstacles to not get hit. And that can lead to some places where, for example, you have these laser beams where you're trying to dodge them, and sometimes you're just like, wait a second, why did I get hit by that laser beam? It's just because of the way the camera angle is working that maybe sometimes you might feel like you got hit in a cheap way because the camera didn't quite cooperate with you. So that's like the payoff that you have to take a look at. It's very intense, but because it's very intense, a lot of the tricks that they use for that make it a little bit not quite as super high fidelity in the controls. But the thing is, if you're someone who doesn't really pay that much attention to super high-powered, intense, and how would I say, precise controls, like super heavy-duty precise controls, like Super Meat Boy. If you're not specifically looking for those and you just want something that feels nice to play, then I say that this definitely does feel very nice to play. Like, I'm usually someone who doesn't play that many arcade games or not that many shmups, and I don't really have a problem playing this game at all. I think it does feel very enjoyable to just plug in and play. Now, because the controls are not quite that as precise as they could be, I don't know if I would play this game for a very long time, past arcade and endless, like trying to get a really high score. Like, I'm not the type of person that tries to go for a really high score, so maybe that's not quite something that I would do. But just for having a nice time every now and then, and just play through the game once, because playing through the game once is something that's not quite that simple, there is some sort of sense of achievement and accomplishment when you manage to play through the arcade mode once. Because it did take me multiple tries, and it's definitely not something that's very simple, and it was actually a very nail-biter finish if you watch my playthrough of it. I like the fact that it does use, oh my god, I'm an idiot, very simple mechanics, but tries to use them in different ways that make them harder. And also, if you play the arcade mode, it usually introduces a mechanic to you and then gradually cranks up the mechanic until it becomes a lot harder. And I think that's a very nice way of introducing difficulty to your game. Every game should do it like that, and many games do. It's like the game design 101 on how to actually introduce mechanics. Not every game does that. You would be surprised on how many games actually fail and something like that. And something that you've learned, some mechanics are gonna appear later on as well. Like, something that you see a lot is the mirror mechanic, where some surfaces are mirrors and they reflect shots back at you. and you see that some surfaces like this enemy right here switches from having a mirror on him to not having a mirror on him. And if lasers are about to be shot, then you see that the camera zooms in a bit more and there's more effects and everything, so it's very obvious when lasers are being shot. So the game does do very well on those aspects as well. The one thing I have to say though about mirrors is sometimes there might be enemies that don't really have a tell or a pattern, or at least a pattern that you can figure out by just playing the game once or twice, that you might have to play longer on when they change between mirror and not mirror. So sometimes it feels like you might get unfairly hit because something changed to a mirror and you didn't anticipate it. For the most part, that doesn't happen that often, and once you realize where it happens, you can then be a little bit more careful. It does mean that sometimes you might have to stop shooting for a little bit in order to not get hit, because you're like, oh, this enemy, sometimes it changes to mirrors, but I'm not quite sure when, so I might have to be a little bit more careful, maybe have to take some pauses every now and then, but overall I think it's not too big of a deal, unless you're trying to like really play at the limit, because then you're gonna get shot sometimes. And it also, if you play it like the first time, a second time, a third time, like until you get used to it, you might get hit a bunch more, and maybe you don't feel quite that good about that. And once you've gotten used to it, I think it's not that bad. So yeah, overall I would have to say that it does feel nice to play. It really does get your blood pumping. The music is very nice. It does have nice mechanics in it. It's fairly simple still. I like some of the design choices they did. The controls and the way the game handles is not quite as precise as it could be, but at least you do have the payoff that it is more intense because of it. I mean, okay, it's not intense because it controls not quite as good, but the tricks and stuff that they use to make it more intense has these side effects that it doesn't quite control as well as it could. But yeah, overall, it's enjoyable to just play through once or twice and get a little bit of a high score. I don't know if you would play this game for a super long time, so I would say that my overall recommendation for this game would be to maybe like put it on your wishlist or something so you can see when it's on sale. And then if it's ever on like a sale, or if it's part of a Humble Bundle or something, like Steam sales happen a lot. Maybe, okay, a lot per year, like at least like 3 or 4 per year. So yeah, you can like put it on your wishlist, see if it's getting a bit, if it's like 20% off or 30% off or something, and then you can check it out. If you're really into like arcade shooters, then of course you can go for it right away, but if you're unsure whether you want to check it out or not, I would say at least check it out when it's on sale. I guess what I say, at least check it out when it's on sale, and so you can get a little bit of a handle on it. Unless you're really not into arcade games at all, because if you're really not into arcade games, or really not into shmups at all, I don't think this game is gonna change your mind about that. Like, this game is not gonna make a shmup player out of you if you don't have at least a little bit of a sense for shmups. And if you really don't like arcade games at all, then this game is not going to make you an arcade gamer. But I have to say that at least it does have, that the arcade mode that it has is sort of like a single player playthrough, where even though it does have a score, it has like a well-defined ending and ever-increasing difficulty and different boss fights and different obstacles. So it feels like a one-player, single-player campaign playthrough of a game. It's just shorter than other games. But yeah, I think that would be my verdict overall. And on a different note, this was like the first game that I played where I got the game sponsored by GameSide, and it's just pretty good so far. My experience is pretty good so far, I have to say. So I did say in my video where I talked about how I might do more sponsored stuff, that I'm trying to like branch out as well. And like arcades and shmups was like one of the genres that I didn't really play that much, even though I didn't have anything against them. I just happened to not play them that much. But this was at least a very nice experience, and maybe I'll play some more shmups in the future, who knows? Maybe I'll play some more shmups, maybe I'll play some more arcade games in the future, I don't know. So far Operation Play More Games has been a success, and we're gonna see what's up next. I have so many games on my Steam list actually that I've never played. I'm gonna have to take a look at those. And maybe I'm gonna play some completely different games that I still have on my Steam list that I've never played before. Obviously not games that are not that nice to stream, like point-and-click adventures, because I don't think those are that nice to stream. Because it's usually just sitting there waiting for me to get how it works or trying to backseat. Not a fan of that, but yeah. Anyway, we're gonna see where the games lead us. But until then, that was that. If you like that, remember to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. See you guys next time. Oh yeah, one last thing though, if you actually are interested in the game, there's a link to this game in the description of the video. Just saying. Oh, I forgot to mention in my review that the lock-on feature can get in your way sometimes. Well, there you go. Maybe I cut this in. I cut this part in after the end.